Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a fascinating transcription you sent our way. It's an early morning talk from November 2nd, 2004, attributed to Bapdada in Madhuban. And the title is, Be Self-Beneficial and Do Benefit to Those Who Cause Harm. Become a bestower of honor who is full of all powers and all virtues.
Wow.
So, I mean, even just that title alone is...
That's the stage.
It really sets the stage for a lot of interesting ideas, doesn't it?
Yeah. The inner and the outer. Like, how to work on yourself, but then also how to bring that out into the world in a way that benefits everyone.
Yeah. And even those who maybe aren't so beneficial themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And even how do you, like, if you're becoming full of all powers and virtues, how does that then express itself?
Right.
How do you live that?
Yeah. How do you actually do that? Yeah, that's a great point. So for you, our listener, we're going to be exploring this discourse, pulling out some key understandings. We'll be taking a look at this concept of love, and that's sneth. We're going to be looking at spiritual power and self-mastery. We'll be taking a look at self-respect, which is swaman, and giving honor, which is saman. And then finally, the idea of selfless service, or seva. So there's a lot here, and I think some of these might resonate, some might be a little bit new to you. I think you'll find some really, really interesting angles here as we delve deeper. So I think a good place to start is with this idea of love, sneh.
Yeah.
Now, the discourse begins by describing love as this unifying force. It brings everyone close to the Father, regardless of physical distance. What's a key insight that struck you about that initial point?
Well, I think what's so powerful about it is it's not just a feeling or an emotion that, comes and goes. It's talking about something fundamental to our being. It's almost as if we have this inherent connection. Like we're constantly singing Marababa internally,
Right.
even if we're not consciously aware of it. And because of that, it makes you think, okay, so all of this stuff about, separation or distance, that's really an illusion.
Right.
At the most fundamental level, we're all connected.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's not so much about like bridging a gap as much as it is about recognizing that there really isn't one there.
Right.
In the first place. That's a really interesting way to frame it. And then it goes on to say this. This love is actually crucial for detaching from body consciousness and worldly relationships. Now, that seems like kind of a significant claim. How does cultivating this love, this sneh, how does that facilitate that shift in focus?
Well, I think if we see it in the bigger picture, it's like having this ultimate anchor. When you have that connection to the source, to this ultimate love, it makes all the other attachments, the temporary things, they don't seem as important anymore.
Right.
And it's not about, rejecting relationships or anything like that.
Right.
It's about, where is your fulfillment coming from? Where are you getting your sense of belonging, of worthiness?
Right. Yeah. That's great. And it also goes on to say that, this love is actually a defense against negativity. It calls that Maya.
Right. And Maya, in this context, really refers to, illusion or the forces that try to keep us stuck in this sort of limited way of thinking.
Okay.
And it says something really interesting. It says that all children are pass in the subject of love.
So we're all good at that. That's our
It's almost like our default setting.
Right. Okay.
Even if we don't always express it.
Interesting. So for you, the listener, who's looking for that quick, the quickest way to kind of grasp these things, this points to a power that you already possess.
Right. It's not something you have to go out and get.
Right.
You already have it. It's just about, how do you tap into it?
Right. Okay. Now the discourse then transitions to this idea of spiritual power and self-mastery. And it says that the Father has bestowed all powers upon all children, making them Master Almighty.
Wow.
That's quite an inheritance, isn't it?
Yeah. And it really makes you think, well, do you experience that? Do you feel like you have all powers?
Right.
Do you feel like you have that constant adhikar, that authority over them?
Right. Yeah. Like it's one thing to know
Right.
that you have unlimited resources, but can you actually access them?
Right, exactly.
At the moment that you need them.
Right. Yeah. It's like that's like, I wish I had said that 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
That perfect comeback.
Yeah, right.
But it comes later.
Right, exactly. And the text uses this really compelling analogy of a power army where the required Shakti, or power, should be Hazir, which means present, I believe.
Yes.
And respond with Ji Hazur, which means yes, sir, basically. And it should be according to the specific time and situation. So, that's a really vivid image of just readily available inner strength, isn't it?
It is, and it's not, it shouldn't be a struggle. It should be natural. It should be, you own it. It's yours.
Right. And it's interesting too because then it talks about, if you don't have that kind of natural access, then it's almost like you become ahin or subordinate.
Right.
Instead of atikari.
Which is an authority.
An authority.
Right.
And that's when you're not following the father's guidance or, the Srimat, the Agya.
Right. And if we think about it in the context of, the father being the one who bestows these powers, it's like, well, if you're not connected to the source,
right,
how are you going to fully tap into those powers?
Right, right.
You're on your own, essentially.
Right. So it's not like, we're cut off or anything, but it's a matter of how efficiently are we able to access these things.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, too, because it acknowledges that, not everyone's at the same level here. It says there's this number-wise attainment of this. Not everyone's number one when it comes to this. So for you, the listener, thinking about gaining knowledge quickly, this is an area where you might be able to improve, right? Yeah. Focus your efforts in this particular area to see some growth.
Yeah. And it's a nice way of thinking about it. Like, it's not that some people have it and some people don't.
Right.
It's more like we're all on this journey.
Right.
And we can all progress.
Right. Okay. Now, I want to talk about this balance that it brings up between swaman, or self-respect, and sayaman, giving honor.
Oh.
Now, how are these two linked, according to the text?
Well, I love this part. It basically says that a soul that truly has self-respect is automatically a giver of honor.
Interesting.
It's not, something you have to put on, like, a mask or anything.
Right.
It's just a natural outflow.
Right.
And it also clarifies that giving honor isn't about, bestowing something on someone.
Right.
It's about considering them as honorable.
Okay. So it's more internal than it is external.
Right. It's a shift in perspective.
Okay, that's an important distinction. And then it brings up this example of Brahma Baba, who's considered the first soul of the drama, and talks about how he was, constantly giving honor to everyone.
Right. And as a result was universally respected.
Right, right. So it's like this reciprocal kind of dynamic that's happening. It's not transactional, I don't think, but
right. It's not, you do this for me and I'll do this for you.
Right.
But it's more like when you see that inherent worthiness in yourself, you naturally see it in others.
Right. Okay.
And it just creates this beautiful cycle.
That's great. That's a really great point. And then it goes on to say that, giving honor is like planting a seed of love in the hearts of others. Yeah. And it talks about how in our current context, those who give honor are actually being obedient children. They're following the father's shrimat, these auspicious feelings and good wishes. So it's almost like honor is this core expression of love within this family.
Yeah, it's the heart. It's the love coming out.
Right. And then it says something really interesting. It says that giving honor actually makes it easier to establish yourself in self-respect.
Right. Because when you give those good wishes, those dwayan, they come back to you.
Right. So it's not like you're doing it to get something, but it's a natural consequence, I guess.
Yeah, it's natural outflow.
Right. And then it says this follow father. And it says, become a giver of honor to easily become full of all virtues.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but so profound.
Right. So now comes the tricky part.
Okay.
And this is something for you, the listener, to really think about. How easy or difficult do you find it to extend this honor to everyone?
Right.
And it even mentions, this title, Sarva Upkari, which means benefactor of all.
Right.
So it's talking about those who cause harm, the Apkaris.
Yeah.
It really challenges our thinking about who deserves our respect, doesn't it?
It does. And I think it really comes back to that question of, like, how deep is your understanding of that inherent worthiness? If you truly see that in yourself, can you see it even in those who are acting in ways that you don't agree with?
Right.
Or who are causing harm? Right.
And it says that there's a self-benefit to doing that, to cultivating this sarva upkai drishti, this beneficial vision. And also it talks about having this attitude or vritti, and also this remembrance, smriti.
Right.
So what do you think? What is that self-benefit there?
Well, I think if we go back to that idea of love being a protection against negativity, it's like you're able to maintain that vision that everyone is inherently worthy, even those who are causing harm. it prevents you from getting caught up in the negativity.
Right.
It's like a shield.
Right.
It
Yeah.
protects your own inner state.
That's a really interesting point. And it's saying that even though we might not like or agree with
Right.
what someone's doing, that doesn't mean that we can't still see their inherent worth.
Right. And it doesn't mean that we condone their actions.
Right.
It just means that we're choosing to see them from a higher perspective.
Right. So, and then for you, the listener who's looking for that really clear, that kind of streamlined approach, it's saying that if you focus on giving honor, a lot of these other things will take care of themselves.
Yeah. It's like that saying, take care of the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves.
Right. Okay, that's great. Now, the discourse then kind of shifts gears a little bit. And it starts talking about this urgency of transformation and service, this idea of seva. It says that, time is speeding up and we need to accelerate our progress towards perfection and equality. So why is there this emphasis on urgency?
Well, I think it's important to understand that in this particular philosophy, there's this idea of cycles of time and that we're approaching a very significant point in that cycle.
Okay.
And so the urgency comes from this understanding that, we're running out of time.
Okay. So it's not so much about, anxiety or fear, but it's about like
Right.
this window of opportunity.
Right. Exactly. It's about making the most of the time that we have.
Okay, yeah. And it even talks about the father being happy to see new children arriving. So it's not like we're running from something. It's there's this welcoming kind of feeling.
Exactly. It's like a celebration.
Right. Okay. Now there's this mention of the Karnataka service turn. And it encourages everyone to maintain this #1 status in effort and victory. What do you think that's about?
Well, it seems to be acknowledging the contributions of a particular region.
Okay.
And encouraging them to continue their efforts.
Right. Okay.
Keep up the good work.
Right. Yeah. And then it goes into talking about this idea of impactful service. And it specifically mentions BAID program, these large programs. And it says that each program should result in at least 108 new individuals being connected.
Wow.
That's a pretty concrete goal, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
So it's not just about, having these ideas, but about really bringing them into the world in a very tangible way.
Exactly. It's about, making a real impact.
Right. And it even goes on to say that, there's this need to follow up and nurture these new individuals to help them become students and cooperators. So it's not just about, getting numbers. It's about really fostering.
Right. It's about building community.
Right. Okay. And then, this is interesting, it has this practical application. And it says it's this 1-second mental exercise. You just say to yourself, I'm a Farishta, then a Devta. So Farishta means angel, and Devta means deity. Now, what's the significance of this really rapid kind of mental shift?
Well, it's like a mental workout.
Yeah.
Just like you exercise your body. This is an exercise for your mind.
Okay.
It helps you to break free from those old patterns of thinking.
Okay.
To detach from the body and the material world and to connect to your spiritual identity.
So, and it's interesting because, it says Farishta and then Devta.
Right.
So it's like there's
a progression.
There's a progression.
First you detach and then you embody.
Right. Okay.
You embody those divine qualities.
Interesting. So it's a quick, but powerful technique.
Yeah. And you can do it anywhere, anytime.
Right. Okay. Now we have this blessing and a slogan. So the blessing is, may you be a Nidrajit, Chakravarti, who gives divorce to the sleep of carelessness. So Nidrajit is victorious over sleep, and Chakravarti is an emperor or empress. So that's really interesting, imagery there.
It is. And when you think about, what is the sleep of carelessness? It's that kind of forgetfulness that keeps us stuck in old patterns.
Okay.
And so to be Nidrajit is to be awake, to be aware, to be present.
Okay.
And to be Chakravarti is to really embody that sovereignty, that self-mastery.
Right. Okay.
And that's really the goal here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the slogan that follows this is, by becoming a cooperator in the Father's task with your body, mind, and wealth, or with your mind, speech, and actions, you will become a Sahayogi. And Sahayogi means easy yogi.
Right.
So it's like this effortlessness, that comes when you're in alignment.
Right. When you're cooperating.
When you're cooperating, yeah.
When you're in sync.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think this is really important, for the listener who's thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but I don't have a lot of time.
Right.
It's saying, if you if you cooperate, if you align yourself, then it becomes easy. It's not so much about, struggling or striving, but it's about that natural kind of...
It's about flow.
Flow, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we have these unexpressed hints, or avyaktishar, and it talks about this culture of truthfulness, satyata, and also civility, sabhyata. And it says that, just as the Father is God is truth, then truthfulness is really important.
Right. That's a foundational value.
It's a foundational value, yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's really about integrity. It's about aligning your inner and outer worlds.
Okay.
So that your thoughts, words, and actions are all in harmony.
Right. Okay. And it goes on to say that, a truly serviceable person will demonstrate this in all of their relationships and their connections and their thoughts and their words.
Right. It's not just something you put on for show.
Right.
It's who you are at your core.
Right. Every thought, every word, every sankalp, every vachan.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So for the listener, who enjoys different perspectives, who enjoys thinking critically about these things, it's interesting because it's pointing to this really, really deep foundation of truthfulness and civility. So to recap for you, the listener, we've gone through a lot of these key insights from this discourse.
Yeah.
And we talked about this power of love. We talked about this potential for us to master spiritual powers. We talked about the transformative effect of giving honor and self-respect. And then we talked about this urgency and the purpose of service.
Right. And we also talked about some practical tools.
Right.
Like that 1-second mental exercise.
Mental exercise.
That help us in this journey.
Yeah. And I think what's really important to remember is these aren't just abstract ideas.
Right.
This is stuff that we can actually implement
in our lives.
Exactly. And it can make a real difference.
Right. Yeah. So it's not just philosophy. It's a way of life. Really.
Yeah. It's about living it.
About living it. Right.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. How might consciously cultivating that balance between self-respect and giving honor really reshape your relationships and your understanding of those around you? Think about what it would mean to really become a giver of honor in every area of your life.
Powerful.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive.